NET-213 Cisco networking, week 2. This is Wednesday, the first day. We started talking about the things from chapter 1. We really got into almost the entire chapter. We talked about networks in real life. We talked about data, and we talked about data in the form of digital data, binary, ones and zeros. Okay, and then we use this example here of a bunch of 8 bits gets of a byte. We have a byte of information, and binary is base 2. So we use 2 fundamentally. 2 to the 0 is 1, 2 to the 1 is 2, 2 to the second is 4, and so forth. I did a little bit of an example of decimal, and how we use 10 places. It's base 10 for decimal. And we talked about that and how that system works. You know, first placeholder 8 would be 8 ones, 3 tens, 2 hundreds, 4 thousands. Okay, and we get a number. Same thing happens in base 2. So for way over here on the left, where we have that, where we have, I can show my finger here, where we have this 1, that's one group of 2 to the 6th, which would be 64. And one group of 1, 65, if this was base 10. And then I gave some examples. I gave an example of our voice being analog and converting it to digital. Just a real simple example. We talked about these 3 terms, and the internet, as we know it, the internetwork. And intranet, we use the same technology, but it functions internally in a business. And extranet is that intranet allowed to be accessed by a small or large number of outside companies, but yet not everybody like the internet. Then we start talking about communications. In all communications, you have a sender and receiver. We have some method that we're communicating, for example, talking face-to-face or whatever. We have a language, rules or protocol that we follow in order for the communication to work. How fast we communicate, timing is important, and then confirmation. Do we acknowledge what we received? And then in all networking now, we talk a lot about, and this comes up later on, but I mentioned it now, TCP/IP, and the ability to acknowledge TCP or UDP where we don't acknowledge. Transmission Control Protocol, IP protocol. And that'll come up a lot more later on, and UDP comes up later on. Talked a little bit about the quality of communications, and then we talked about the different elements that make up communication. There were a few things I discussed that we didn't write on the board that was in the curriculum, but was pretty straightforward. We have devices, we have some message we're going to send, we have some medium to send the message across, and then we have some rules. We have a service like web service, and then we have some protocol or rule that allows that to work. And so we did example. We did example of a smartphone pulling up something on Facebook. Okay? Smartphone pulling up Facebook. So the smartphone is our device, connects to a 3G, then connects through some wires, goes to the ISP, goes through the internet. And on this end, we have our web server at Facebook. That's connected in some networking devices, a local area network with those straight lines, and then we have that jagged line which represents some type of WAN connection. Somewhere where we're paying a provider to make the connection into the internet. We talked a little bit about the internet in general. Okay? And then we looked at an example of the class of NIACC-IST area. We got a switch, and we have different classrooms coming off in which we communicate, and that switch can keep track of that multi-layered switch, this one here, that keeps track of which IPs match which MAC address in order for sending the information back out to the switches. And the switches, they use just a MAC address to forward that information to the correct PC, our device. Key elements in all networks: fault tolerance, redundant connections, and we Talked about scalability, being able to grow. We used the example over here of easily being able to add a classroom, coming off and adding another classroom maybe with computers. Quality of service, we're going to cover a little bit more on Friday. Remember my days here. And then security. We mentioned the 4 key things for security. Confidentiality, is the information confidential? Integrity, does the data get transferred and is still the same data? Okay, it doesn't change. And then we got to make data available. We have to decide what data is made available to who and how much who can see what in terms of confidentiality. 3 key things that fall under security. And then the last thing, and the curriculum has it under fault tolerance, which is fine, redundant connections, and how we do this. We can have a circuit switch connection, which would be very similar to making a phone call. The circuit is connected, the circuit is up until you hang up the phone. Or we have packet switch connections, which are considered connectionless. We put the information into a packet, send it into the network, and the packet finds its way through the network and then gets assembled back into a message at the other end. This is how basically the internet works. Packet switching. It's considered a connectionless. Your phone is a switch circuit. It's considered connection oriented. It makes a connection, keeps the connection up until you break the connection. Alright, so this is what we had on the board today. We'll finish that up on Friday and go right into Chapter 2 on Friday. So that's it.